The docking bay of Nexus Station smelled like engine coolant, synthetic coffee, and the distinct odor of too many species crammed into one recycled air system. Ben Rowan stepped off the transport shuttle, his tool bag slung over one shoulder, and immediately regretted his choice of destination. The station was even more crowded than the last time he'd passed through, 3 standard years ago. "Welcome to Nexus Station, the crossroads of the 7 sectors," chirped a floating orb-shaped announcer bot as it hovered past him. "Please enjoy your stay, and remember, unauthorized genetic sampling is punishable by fine or temporal displacement." Ben Grimaud said. He hated these corporate transit hubs, all advertisements and regulations designed to extract maximum profit from travelers. But the job offer had been too good to pass up. 6 weeks of repair work on the station's environmental systems, followed by payment that would keep his ship fuel for months. He navigated through the crowd, dodging a group of Centaurian monks whose translucent robes flowed like water around their elongated limbs. A pair of maintenance droids scuttled past, arguing in binary about the optimal temperature for Corridor 47B. Ben tried to follow the signs toward the accommodation sector, but the holographic displays kept switching between 17 different languages, none of which stayed visible long enough to read. "Pardon me," he said to a station official with 4 arms and a uniform so crisp it looked painful. "Could you point me toward the nearest food court? I've been living on shuttle rations for days." The official's upper eye ridge twitched. "Deck 12, Section F. Follow the green bioluminescent path." Then they returned to tapping on their datapad, conversation clearly over. Ben sighed and adjusted his bag. He needed food, a shower, and about 12 hours of sleep before meeting his new employer tomorrow. The repair job wasn't difficult, standard atmospheric scrubber maintenance, but the station supervisor had mentioned unusual complications in the work order. In Ben's experience, that typically meant someone had tried fixing something they shouldn't have touched. He followed the green path, which pulsed gently beneath his feet, leading him through the station's main thoroughfare. Vendors hawked everything from forbidden tech to allegedly authentic Earth antiques. A 6-armed chef flipped sizzling blue protein on a circular grill while simultaneously serving customers and arguing with a supplier. Ben's stomach growled. "Just a few more minutes," he muttered to himself. Food, shower, sleep. In that order. The thoroughfare widened into a bustling plaza. The ceiling stretched upward at least 7 decks, creating the illusion of open space. Holographic representations of nearby planets rotated slowly overhead, advertising tourist packages with promotional rates that didn't include the countless hidden fees. Ben had almost reached the food court entrance when it happened. "MOM, look, my dad is here." The high-pitched, jubilant cry cut through the ambient noise of the station. Ben didn't turn at first. Some lucky family having a reunion, most likely. "Dad, Dad, over here." The voice was closer now, and he noticed people turning to stare at him with curious expressions. That's when a small figure burst through the crowd and skidded to a halt directly in front of him. The child, if that was the right term, stood about waist-high with skin the pale blue of shallow ocean water. Her eyes were large, solid black, except for pinpricks of silver that seemed to dance like stars. A mop of what looked like fine silver threads cascaded from her head, floating slightly as if underwater. She wore a jumper covered in cartoon representations of what Ben recognized as obsolete Earth spacecraft. "I found you," she exclaimed, bouncing excitedly on what appeared to be triple-jointed legs. "I told Mom you'd come back, just like you promised." Ben's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around, certain the child was talking to someone else. But there was nobody behind him except a wall. Ben stumbled over his words. "I think you confused me with someone else, kid." The girl tilted her head, her silver hair swirling around her face. "Don't be silly, Dad. I know you anywhere." She tapped her temple with a 6-fingered hand. "I can feel you right here." The crowd around them had grown still. Ben felt dozens of eyes on him, some curious, others suspicious. A nervous laugh escaped him. "Listen, I'm not. Luna, don't run off like that." A woman pushed through the onlookers. At first glance, she appeared mostly human, but Ben noticed the slight shimmer to her skin, the unusual amber tint to her eyes, and the faint ridges along her temples that marked her as having mixed heritage. She wore a practical jumpsuit with multiple pockets and a utility belt. Her hair was pulled back in a tight knot, shimmering between copper and gold, depending on how the light hit it. When she spotted the girl holding Ben's hand, when had that happened? She stopped abruptly. "Luna," she said cautiously. "Who is this?" The girl, Luna, grinned so widely that Ben could see she had an extra row of pearlescent teeth behind the front set. "It's Dad. He came back just like he said he would." Luna tightened her grip on Ben's hand. Her skin felt cool and slightly textured, like fine sandpaper. The woman's eyes narrowed as she studied Ben's face. Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness to something unreadable. "Is that so?" she said softly. Ben held up his free hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of innocence. "Ma'am, I've never seen this child before in my life. There's been some kind of mistake." "No mistake," Luna insisted, tugging on his hand. "He just doesn't remember because of the spores from the Lunar Festival." "Mom, you said the spores make humans forget things sometimes." The woman, presumably Luna's mother, approached slowly. "My name is Sarah," she said, extending her hand in the human custom of greeting. "And you are?" Ben Ruan." He shook her hand, noticing its unusual warmth compared to the child's cool grip. "Look, I just arrived on this station literally 10 minutes ago. I've never been to any lunar festival. There's been a misunderstanding." Sarah's eyes never left his face. "Interesting, because you look exactly like the man in Luna's memory imprints. And Aquilian children don't make mistakes about these things." Ben's stomach sank. What had been an awkward case of mistaken identity was rapidly becoming something more complicated. Memory imprints? Sarah tapped her temple, mirroring Luna's earlier gesture. Aquilians can store genetic memory impressions of significant individuals. It's evolutionary, helps offspring recognize parents even after long separations during migration cycles. "I'm not Aquilian," Ben said flatly. "No, but Luna is half human, half Aquilian, and she's imprinted on you." Sarah's voice hardened. "The question is how and when." Luna, apparently bored with the adult conversation, had begun examining Ben's tool bag with evident delight. "Oh, you still have the sonic aligner. Can I see it? I've been practicing making mini-bots like you showed me." Luna, Sarah interrupted gently. "Why don't we all go somewhere quieter to talk about this?" Ben was about to protest. Food, shower, and sleep had been his only plans, when metallic voice spoke from overhead. "Attention! Scan complete. Genetic marker alert in Sector 7. Possible parental identification event detected. Please proceed to the Bureau of Parental Affairs, Level 3, for mandatory verification. Compliance is not optional. Repeat, compliance is not optional." Ben looked up to see a floating scanner drone retreating into a ceiling port. Around them, the crowd began to murmur and disperse, giving them a wider berth. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. Sarah sighed, suddenly looking tired. "Station regulations. Any potential parental identification triggers automatic verification." She gestured to a different pulsing path that had appeared on the floor, this one pulsing an official-looking orange. "We need to go to the Bureau. Now, but I have nothing to do with." Luna looked up at him with those star-filled eyes. "It's okay, Dad. The Bureau people are nice. They have puzzles while we wait." Ben wanted to argue, to explain that he was just a transit technician with a repair job and no connection to anyone on this station. But the security drones now hovering at the perimeter of the clearing crowd suggested that objections would only complicate matters. Sarah must have seen his resignation. "The sooner we get this cleared up, the sooner you can go on your way," she said, though something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced of his innocence. With Luna still clutching his hand and practically skipping beside him, Ben followed the orange path toward bureaucratic hell, his dreams of food and rest evaporating into the station's recycled atmosphere. The Bureau of Parental Affairs occupied an entire section of Level 3, its entrance marked by a holographic display of various species family units rotating in endless permutation. As they approached, the display shifted to show a human male, an Aquilian child, and a woman of mixed heritage, a perfect representation of their unlikely trio. "Welcome to the Interstellar Bureau of Parental Affairs," announced a pleasant voice as the door slid open, "where family connections know no planetary bounds." The interior reminded Ben of a medical facility crossed with a legal office. The walls were pristine white, the lighting softly ambient, and various beings sat in waiting areas divided by species-specific comfort requirements. Some were in standard gravity, others in reduced or enhanced fields. A Jovian floated in a gaseous enclosure, its tentacles wrapped protectively around what appeared to be a clutch of luminescent eggs. A receptionist with 4 eyes and impeccably trimmed facial tentacles looked up as they approached the main desk. "Ah, the genetic marker alert. We've been expecting you." The receptionist's tentacles rippled in what might have been amusement or annoyance. Ben couldn't tell. "Please proceed to verification room 7. And do note that any attempt to evade mandatory verification will result in immediate detention and a minimum 7-cycle quarantine period." Sarah nodded her thanks and guided them toward a corridor branching off the main reception area. Luna had finally released Ben's hand and was now skipping ahead, apparently familiar with the route. "Does this happen often?" Ben asked under his breath. "More than you might think," Sarah replied. "Interspecies relations are complicated. Add in memory-affecting substances, temporal anomalies, and the occasional quantum entanglement event." She shrugged. "The Bureau stays busy." Verification Room 7 was smaller than Ben expected, containing little more than a central platform surrounded by various scanning equipment and 2 cushioned benches along one wall. Luna immediately went to a corner where several puzzles and toys were stored, selecting a complex 3-dimensional object that began to glow as she manipulated it. A door on the opposite side opened, and a being in a white uniform entered. They appeared mostly humanoid except for a crown of short, pulsating tendrils and skin that shifted between various shades of green. "I am Verification Officer Thaz," they announced. "I will conduct the mandatory assessment as required by Statute 789B of the Interstellar Parenting Code." Thaz consulted a glowing tablet. "We have one Luna Nexvala, registered as child of Sarah Nexvala under the Provisional Single Guardian Protocol, claiming biological relation to one." They looked up at Ben. "Your identification, please." Ben reluctantly handed over his transit card. Thaz scanned it and nodded. "Benjamin Artemis Rowan, human, registered technician. No current familial bonds on record." They tapped something into their tablet. "Interesting. This is a mistake," Ben insisted. "I've never." Thaz held up a hand. "Save your statements for the verification process." They gestured to the central platform. "Please step onto the scanner, both the child and the alleged parental unit." Luna bounded over from her corner, the puzzle toy still glowing in her hands. "Come on, Dad. The scanner tickles." Feeling increasingly like he was caught in some absurdist dream, Ben followed Luna onto the platform. Immediately, a gentle hum filled the air, and a cylinder of blue light descended from the ceiling, enveloping them both. "Standard genetic comparison scan." Thaz explained, more to Sarah than to Ben. "Tests for over 4,000 markers across compatible species pairings. Results are typically available within." A sharp ding interrupted them. Thaz's tendrils stiffened in surprise. That was unusually fast. The officer moved to a console and studied the display for what felt to Ben like an eternity. Finally, Thaz turned, their skin now a mottled pattern of deep green and pale yellow. "Well," Sarah asked, tension evident in her voice. "The results are unexpected," Thaz said slowly. "There's an 87% probability match on primary genetic markers." Ben felt the floor seem to shift beneath him. "That's impossible. The Bureau's verification systems are calibrated to 99.97% accuracy," Thaz replied, sounding slightly offended, "even accounting for interspecies complexities." Luna looked up at Ben with a triumphant smile. "See? I told you. There must be some mistake," Ben insisted. I don't have children. I've never. He stopped, a cold feeling washing over him. How old is Luna? She's 5 standard years, Sarah answered, watching him carefully. 5 years. Ben mentally rewound his timeline. 5 years ago, he'd been working a long-term contract in the Proxima system. There had been shore leave on various stations and planetoids. Nights in questionable establishments with exotic drinks, and gaps in his memory. The Lunar Festival, he said softly. Where exactly is that held? On Aquila Prime, during the triple moonrise that occurs once every 6.7 standard years, Sarah said. It's famous for its bioluminescent spores that create shared consciousness experiences, and occasionally more permanent connections. Ben ran a hand through his hair. I was in that system around that time, working transport maintenance on the Helix freighter routes. We had a 3-day layover while they loaded minerals from the northern continent. Thaws clear their throat, or whatever passed for a throat in their physiology. Regardless of the circumstances, the verification has confirmed a biological connection meeting the threshold for parental rights and responsibilities under Section 42 of the Code. What does that mean exactly? Ben asked, dreading the answer. It means, Thaz said, tapping on their tablet, that you are now registered as Luna's biological father in the interstellar database, with all accompanying rights and responsibilities. But I don't even know her. An unfortunate circumstance that does not negate biological reality, Thaz replied calmly. The Bureau offers family integration counseling for such situations. I'm scheduling your first session for tomorrow morning. This is insane, Ben muttered. I'm just passing through. I have a contract job starting tomorrow. Actually, Sarah interjected, station regulations require a minimum 30-cycle observation period following new parental identification before either party can depart. 30 cycles? Ben's voice echoed off the white walls. Luna looked up from her puzzle with a startled expression, and he immediately modulated his tone. I can't stay here for a month. Thaw's tendrils rippled in what might have been sympathy. The regulation exists to protect the child's developmental well-being. Sudden appearance and disappearance of parental figures can cause significant psychological trauma in many species. I didn't suddenly appear. Luna spotted me randomly in a crowded plaza. Nonetheless, Thaz continued, the binding period is non-negotiable without a special exemption from the station administrator. They finished entering data and handed Ben a glowing card. Your temporary residence permit and parental recognition documentation. The system has already notified your employer of your situation. Station law mandates accommodation for verified parental obligations. Ben stared at the card in disbelief. In the span of an hour, he'd gone from being a free-roaming technician to a legally recognized father with a month-long attachment to a station he'd planned to leave in 6 weeks. Luna tugged at his hand. Does this mean you're staying with us, Dad? Before Ben could answer, Thaz spoke again. Temporary cohabitation with the established guardian is standard protocol during the observation period, unless separate accommodations within 1 kilometer proximity can be arranged. He can stay with us, Sarah said, then added with a pointed look at Ben. It will make monitoring the situation easier. Ben opened his mouth to protest, then closed it again. What choice did he have? Fighting the station bureaucracy would only make things worse, potentially extending his forced stay or even resulting in fines. Fine, he said finally, but I still have a job to do while I'm here. Of course, Sarah nodded. I work in botanical engineering on Deck 9. Luna attends the station's education program during standard day cycles. We're all settled then, Thaz said with what sounded like relief. Officer Mibix will conduct a follow-up assessment in 7 cycles. Until then, I recommend reviewing this Sudden Parenthood. Your guide to interspecies family formation materials included with your documentation. With that, they ushered the newly recognized family out of the verification room and back into the main bureau space. As they walked toward the exit, Luna happily between them, Ben leaned towards Sarah. I need to understand what's happening here. You can't possibly believe I'm really. Luna's abilities to recognize genetic signatures are not wrong, Sarah said quietly. Whether you remember it or not, you were at the Lunar Festival on Aquila Prime 5 years ago, and something happened there that led to her existence. But you, are you her mother then? Sarah shook her head. I'm her guardian, her biological mother. That's a conversation for another time, when little ears aren't listening. She nodded toward Luna, who was humming to herself, but clearly trying to catch every word. They passed through the bureau's exit and back into the main station thoroughfare. Ben's head was spinning, his stomach now painfully empty, and exhaustion weighing on his limbs. Our quarters are in the residential section, Deck 5, Sarah said. I imagine you'd like to rest and process all this. Ben nodded gratefully. And eat. I haven't had real food in days. We have a food synthesizer that makes the BSD protein puffs. And I programmed it myself to make ice cream that turns your tongue blue. Despite everything, Ben found himself smiling at the child's enthusiasm. If the tests were right, and he still wasn't convinced they were, this bright, strange little being carried his genetic material. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and fascinating. As they made their way to Deck 5, Luna skipping between them and chattering about her latest inventions and discoveries, Ben tried to recall anything about the lunar festival. There were fragments, flashes of bioluminescent spores drifting like snow, music that seemed to vibrate through his bones rather than his ears, and a woman with eyes like the deepest ocean. But the memories slipped away as quickly as they surfaced, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. One thing was certain. His straightforward repair job had just become the most complicated assignment of his life. Sarah's quarters were modest but comfortable, located in a section of the station populated primarily by science and engineering personnel. The main living area opened to a small kitchenette, with 2 bedrooms and a shared hygiene facility branching off from the central space. Plants of various species filled every available surface and hung from ceiling attachments, giving the otherwise standard station housing a vibrant, living quality. The botanist brings her work home, Sarah explained, noticing Ben's surprise at the greenery. Some of these are experimental cultivars designed to enhance oxygen production in artificial environments. And some are just pretty, Luna added, gently touching a fern-like plant with fronds that change color in response to her touch. The guest alcove is through there, Sarah pointed to a small doorway. It's meant for temporary visitors, so it's not exactly spacious. It's fine, Ben assured her. I've slept in maintenance tubes and cargo holds. Anything with a horizontal surface works for me. While Sarah prepared a meal in the kitchenette, refusing Ben's offers of help with the terse, I've got a system. Luna dragged him to her room to show him her collection of homemade gadgets. It was immediately obvious that the child possessed extraordinary intelligence and creativity. Her bedroom resembled a miniature laboratory more than a child's sleeping quarters. This one monitors the microbial colonies in the air circulation system, she explained, pointing to a small device affixed to her wall. And this one translates plant electrical impulses into sound. The firm by the door has a beautiful voice, kind of like singing. You built all these yourself? Ben asked, genuinely impressed. Luna nodded enthusiastically. Mom helps sometimes with the materials, but I figure out the designs. She lowered her voice to a whisper. The station engineers don't like when I borrow components, but I always make them better when I return them. Ben laughed despite himself. I used to do the same thing as a kid. Drove my mother crazy when I'd disassemble appliances to build my projects. Luna's eyes widened. You did? See, that's why I knew you were my dad. We think the same. The casual certainty in her voice sobered Ben quickly. This child truly believed he was her father, and according to the Bureau's tests, she was probably right. But he had no memory of her mother, no recollection of any event that could have led to Luna's creation. It was like being told he'd gained and lost years of his life without knowing it. Dinner's ready, Sarah called from the main room, saving Ben from having to respond. The meal was simple but delicious, some kind of protein in a savory sauce, accompanied by quick steamed vegetables that retained their crispness and flavor far better than synthesized options. Ben ate ravenously, realizing only as his plate emptied how little he'd been taking care of himself during his last contract. Thank you, he said sincerely to Sarah. That was the best meal I've had in months. She nodded, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. Luna, time for your evening hygiene routine. But Mom, no negociations. You have education programming early tomorrow. Luna sighed dramatically, but complied, gathering what appeared to be a toolkit rather than typical bathroom supplies before disappearing into the hygiene facility. As soon as the door closed, Sarah's demeanor changed. She leaned forward, voice low. I need to know what you remember about the lunar festival. Ben set down his utensil. Almost nothing. I have fragments, lights, music, a feeling of expansion, like my consciousness was bigger than my body. But nothing concrete. Do you remember meeting someone named Elry? The name stirred something deep in Ben's memory, but he couldn't capture it. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't place it. Sarah studied him for a long moment. The spores affect different species in different ways. In humans, they often cause selective memory suppression, especially of events that occurred while under their influence. So I could have. Ben hesitated, uncomfortable with the implications. Met Elry, yes. Participated in a genetic merging ceremony without fully understanding its significance? Also possible. Ben rubbed his temples. This is insane. I'm not. I never wanted. I believe you, Sarah interrupted, surprising him. I don't think you knowingly abandoned Luna or her mother. The timing of everything. It aligns with what I know happened. Which is what, exactly? Sarah glanced toward the hygiene facility, ensuring Luna was still occupied before continuing. Elry is Luna's biological mother. She's a Quillian, a marine biologist specializing in genetic adaptation. We met at university and remain close. She attended the Lunar Festival 5 years ago during a research expedition. And I was there, apparently. Yes, according to what Elry told me later, she met a human engineer during the festival. They spent 3 days together under the influence of the spores. When the festival ended, he left, as most visitors do, with no memory of what had transpired. Ben felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. And she was pregnant. Sarah nodded. A Quillian human conception is rare, but not impossible. Luna is one of only a few dozen such hybrids in the recorded database. Where's Elry now? Why are you raising Luna? A shadow passed over Sarah's face. There were complications. Elry's research involved adaptation genetics, specifically how certain species evolve rapid responses to environmental threats. Her work caught the attention of a corporation called Genesis Holdings. I've heard of them. Pharmaceutical and biotech conglomerate, not known for their ethical standards. That's putting it mildly. When they discovered Elry had produced a viable human-Aquilian hybrid, they became very interested. Too interested. Elry realized they wanted to study Luna, or worse, replicate whatever genetic factors made her existence possible. Ben felt a surge of protective anger that surprised him in its intensity. So Elry went into hiding. She brought Luna to me 2 years ago, asked me to become her legal guardian while she led Genesis away from the station. She contacts us when she can, but it's not safe for her to stay in one place too long. Serait-ce expression ardenned. And now your presence has likely triggered alerts in the system. If Genesis has monitoring algorithms scanning for unusual parental identifications, which I suspect they do, they may already know you're here. The implications hit Ben like a cold wave, which puts Luna in danger. Potentially, Sarah agreed. Or it might give us an advantage they won't expect. The sound of the hygiene facility door sliding open into their conversation. Luna emerged, her silver hair now neatly braided and wearing what appeared to be pajamas decorated with mathematical equations. All clean, she announced. Dad, will you read me a story before sleep cycle? Ben looked helplessly at Sarah, who simply raised an eyebrow as if to say, your problem now. Sure, he said, marveling at how quickly the word came. One story. As he followed Luna back to her room, Ben's mind raced with everything he'd learned. Somewhere out, there was a woman he couldn't remember, running from a corporation that wanted to exploit their child. A child he hadn't known existed until today. Whatever simple repair job he'd come to this station for seemed trivial now. Something much more complex had found him instead. Luna's bedroom lights dimmed automatically as she climbed into bed, surrounding herself with what appeared to be a collection of stuffed toys representing various stellar phenomena, a plush black hole, a smiling nebula, and what looked like a fuzzy interpretation of a quasar. "The stories are in the data crystal," she said, pointing to a small device on a shelf nearby. Ben activated the crystal, which projected a holographic menu of titles. "Any preferences?" "The one about the space whale who makes friends with the asteroid miners." Ben found the title and selected it. The crystal projected the story as a miniature holographic play above Luna's bed, with narration that adjusted its cadence to match the listener's breathing patterns. A sophisticated sleep aid disguised as entertainment. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching as Luna's eyes followed the graceful movements of the holographic space whale. Her small hand found his, her cool fingers wrapping around his much larger ones with complete trust. "I'm glad you came back, Dad," she murmured, her voice already heavy with approaching sleep. "I knew you would, even when Mom said you might not remember us." Ben felt something twist in his chest, a complicated emotion he couldn't name. "Get some sleep, kiddo," he said softly. By the time the space whale had befriended the lonely asteroid miners, Luna was fast asleep, her breathing deep and rhythmic. Ben carefully extracted his hand and stood, watching her for a moment longer. She looked peaceful, this strange child who carried his genes. Her silver hair shimmered faintly in the dim light, and her features in repose showed hints of humanity mixed with the distinctive Aquilian characteristics. Was there something of him in her face? The shape of her brow, perhaps, or the curve of her jaw? Ben quietly left the room, the door sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. He found Sarah in the main living area, working on a tablet surrounded by holographic displays of plant cellular structures. "She's asleep," he said, dropping onto the couch opposite her. "She's extraordinary." Sarah looked up, a hint of pride crossing her features. "Yes, she is. Brilliant, creative, fearless, sometimes too fearless. Like climbing into ducts to improve station systems." "You've noticed her hobby already." Sarah sighed, but there was fondness in the sound. "We've had several conversations with station maintenance about unauthorized enhancements." An awkward silence fell between them. Finally, Ben spoke. "I need to know everything about Genesis Holdings and why they're after Luna. If I'm going to be stuck here for 30 days due to some bureaucratic regulation, I might as well make myself useful." Sarah studied him for a long moment before responding. "Why should I trust you with that information? A few hours ago, you didn't know Luna existed. Now you want to insert yourself into a dangerous situation that Elry and I have been managing for years. Because according to your government's DNA tests, I'm her father," Ben said firmly. "And whether I remember it or not, that makes her my responsibility too." Sarah's expression remained guarded, but something in her posture softened slightly. "We'll talk more tomorrow. You need rest. Morning comes early on station time." She was right. Exhaustion weighed on Ben like a physical force, the day's revelations and emotional whiplash taking their toll. He nodded and stood. "Thank you," he said, "for taking care of her all this time." Sarah's amber eyes met his. "I didn't do it for you. I know. That's why I'm thanking you." As Ben retreated to the small guest alcove and stretched out on the narrow bed, his mind swirled with everything he'd learned. Somewhere in his forgotten past, he'd helped create a remarkable child now being hunted by a powerful corporation. He had 30 days to figure out what to do about it. 30 days to decide if he was truly ready to be someone's father. His last thought before sleep claimed him was of Luna's small hand in his, and the absolute certainty in her voice when she'd called him Dad. The sound of cheerful humming woke Ben from a deep sleep. He blinked in confusion at the unfamiliar ceiling before remembering where he was and why. The events of the previous day crashed back into his consciousness like a wave. The child, the DNA test, the revelation about Genesis Holdings. He sat up, rubbing his face. The humming was coming from beyond his door, accompanied by clattering sounds that suggested someone was busy in the kitchenette. A quick check of his personal device showed it was early, 0530 station time. When Ben emerged from the guest alcove, he found Luna perched on a stool at the kitchen counter, surrounded by what appeared to be mechanical components. She was carefully assembling something while humming a tune he didn't recognize. "Good morning," he said cautiously. Luna looked up with a bright smile. Her silver hair was pulled into two lopsided pigtails today, and she wore coveralls similar to maintenance crew uniforms, only miniaturized. "Dad, you're up. I'm upgrading the breakfast synthesizer to include a wider spectrum of flavor profiles." She held up a small circuit board. "This will allow it to replicate the taste of Jovian cloudberries, which aren't in the standard database." Ben approached the counter, examining the disassembled synthesizer with professional interest. "You've bypassed the manufacturer's flavor restriction protocols," he observed. "That's actually pretty impressive." Luna beamed. "I learned how to override default programming when I was 3. Mom says I have an intuitive understanding of systems architecture." "Where's your mom? I mean, Sarah?" Ben corrected himself, still uncomfortable with the family terminology. "Already at work. She starts early to monitor the dawn cycle effect on the photosynthesis chambers." Luna connected two components with a tiny tool that emitted a faint blue light. "She left nutrient packs for you in the thermal unit." Ben located what appeared to be a coffee equivalent and a protein-rich breakfast bar in the unit Luna had indicated. He watched as she expertly reassembled the synthesizer, her small fingers moving with surprising dexterity and confidence. "You really built all those devices in your room by yourself?" Luna nodded without looking up from her work. "Most of them. Sometimes I get stuck and need help with the quantum calibration aspects. Mom knows biology better than physics." "I could maybe help with that," Ben offered hesitantly. "Physics and mechanical engineering are kind of my specialties." Luna's eyes lit up. "Really? I've been trying to build a portable tachyon detector, but I can't get the temporal shielding right." She finished connecting the last component of the synthesizer and closed the access panel. "Test run." She pressed a sequence of buttons, and the machine hummed to life, producing a small purple cube that steamed slightly. "Jovian cloudberry protein square," Luna announced proudly, breaking the cube in half and offering a piece to Ben. "Try it." Ben cautiously took a bite of the oddly colored food. To his surprise, it was delicious, sweet but complex, with hints of something like cinnamon and vanilla, but distinctly alien. "This is really good," he admitted. "I know. The synthesizer is supposed to have safety limiters that prevent replication of certain luxury consumables. But those are just arbitrary corporate restrictions," Luna explained with the casual confidence of someone discussing basic arithmetic rather than complex programming violations. Ben found himself smiling despite the surreal situation. This child, his child, according to genetic verification, approached the world with fearless curiosity and appeared to have inherited his own knack for bending technological rules. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Don't you have education programming or something?" Luna nodded, checking the small multifunction device on her wrist. "In 42 minutes. The education pods are on deck 4. Mom usually walks me there on her way to the labs." She looked up at Ben with hopeful eyes. "But maybe you could take me today." Before Ben could respond, a chime sounded from the dwelling's communication system. "Incoming message from the Bureau of Parental Affairs," announced a pleasant synthetic voice. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing verification officer Thas. Their skin was a calmer shade of green today, with faint patterns of blue rippling across the surface. "Good morning. I trust your first night of familial integration proceeded without incident." They didn't wait for an answer. "This is a courtesy notification that your assigned family counselor, Dr. Pim Shi, has scheduled your first session for 1,400 hours today. Attendance is mandatory under Section 42B of the Interstellar Parenting Code." "I have a repair job schedule," Ben began. "Your employer has been notified and has adjusted your work schedule accordingly," Thas interrupted smoothly. "The Bureau prioritizes family cohesion over routine maintenance activities." Ben sighed. "Fine. Where do we need to go?" "All information has been transmitted to your documentation card," Thas replied. "Additionally, the Bureau has assigned an integration monitoring drone to observe family interactions during the adjustment period. This is standard procedure." As if on cue, A small spherical device floated through the dwelling's ventilation duct and hovered near the ceiling. It was about the size of a fist, metallic silver, with a single blue light that pulsed gently. The IMD will maintain a discreet distance and only intervene if safety protocols are breached, Thaz continued. Consider it an invisible support resource. You mean a spy? Ben muttered. Thaz's tendrils stiffened slightly. The Bureau prefers benevolent observer. Have a harmonious day. The holographic display vanished, leaving Ben staring at the floating drone with annoyance. Luna appeared completely unbothered by the new surveillance. The monitoring drones are easy to confuse, she whispered conspiratorially. Their tracking algorithms get disrupted by certain resonance frequencies. She tapped her wrist device, and a faint, barely audible tone emanated from it. The drone drifted lazily toward the kitchen, apparently forgetting its assignment. Ben raised an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. Should you be teaching me how to circumvent official monitoring devices? Luna grinned. Mom says knowledge isn't bad, just how people use it. She hopped off her stool. I need to get my education materials. Then can we go? Please. 30 minutes later, Ben found himself walking through the station's main thoroughfare with Luna's hand firmly clasped in his. The corridors were busy with a morning rush, various beings heading to work assignments, automated delivery units zipping through designated lanes, and maintenance droids polishing surfaces and adjusting environmental controls. Luna chattered constantly as they walked, pointing out hidden features of the station's design that most adults would never notice. Maintenance accesses disguised as decorative panels, environmental monitoring nodes tucked into lighting fixtures, and the occasional jury-rig modification that definitely wasn't in the original blueprints. That coolant junction was failing last month, she explained, pointing to an inconspicuous panel. The maintenance team couldn't figure out why, so I left them an anonymous diagnostic report showing the microfracture in the secondary coupling. You just leave anonymous reports for the station engineers? Ben asked incredulously. Luna's shrugged. They just dismiss it if they knew it came from a kid. Adults are funny that way. They reached the education section, a brightly colored area with entrances sized for various species at different developmental stages. Luna led him to a check-in terminal where she placed her hand on a scanner. The screen illuminated with her information and daily schedule. Luna Nexvala, reporting for primary education. Cycle, announced the terminal. Please proceed to Pod 7 for today's neural adaptive learning session. Luna turned to Ben. You can pick me up at the midday break if you want. We could have lunch together. Her expression was hopeful, those star-filled eyes wide and expectant. Ben hesitated. His repair work was scheduled to begin soon, and he'd already lost time with this unexpected parental detour. But something about Luna's expression made it impossible to refuse. Sure, he heard himself say. Midday break. I'll be here. Luna beamed and threw her arms around his waist in a quick hug before darting off toward her assigned pod. Ben stood frozen for a moment, surprised by both the hug and his own agreeable response. First day drop-off? Asked a sympathetic voice beside him. Ben turned to see a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin standing nearby. They appeared to be another parent, judging by the small, multi-limbed child clinging to their leg. Yeah, sort of, Ben replied awkwardly. The separation anxiety fades after a few cycles, they said knowingly. I'm Trellix, by the way. My spawn Millie is in Pod 9. Ben, my Luna's in Pod said me. Trellix nodded. Luna is quite remarkable. She's helped Millie with quantum mathematics several times. They tilted their head curiously. We weren't aware Luna had another parent besides Sarah. It's complicated, Ben said, not wanting to explain his bizarre situation to a stranger. Family configurations often are, Trellix agreed amiably, especially interspecies ones. The important thing is supporting the offspring's developmental journey. Ben nodded, relieved when his personal device chimed with a reminder about his work assignment. Sorry, I've got to get to work. Nice meeting you. As he hurried toward the environmental control sector where his repair job awaited, Ben found himself distracted by thoughts of Luna. The child was clearly brilliant, perhaps even what Earth standards would classify as a genius. She approached complex technical challenges with an intuitive understanding that most adult engineers would envy. And she'd recognized him instantly, despite never having met him before. The implications of Sarah's revelations about Genesis Holdings troubled him deeply. What exactly did they want with Luna? Were they already monitoring the station, waiting for an opportunity? And what would happen after the mandatory 30-cycle period ended? Could he simply leave, knowing what he knew now? The questions swirled in his mind as he reached the Environmental Control Center and checked in with the supervisor, a harried-looking human woman named Talia, who barely looked up from her diagnostic screens. Rowan? About time. We've got cascading failures in the Eastern Quadrant scrubbers. 3 technicians already tried to fix it. Schematics are in the system. She waved him toward an equipment locker. The bureau notification says you need a break at midday for some family thing. That's right, Ben confirmed, gathering the tools he'd need. Talia snorted. Bureaucratic nonsense. Well, do what you can before then. If you fix what the other techs couldn't, I might forgive the interruption. Ben immersed himself in the work, finding comfort in the familiar challenge of troubleshooting complex systems. The scrubber issue turned out to be more interesting than he'd expected. Not a simple mechanical failure, but a subtle programming conflict created when someone had attempted to enhance the filtration algorithms without properly updating the hardware compatibility protocols. He lost track of time as he rewrote sections of code and recalibrated the physical components. When his device chimed with the midday alarm, he was surprised to find 4 hours had passed. "I've got to go," he told Talia, who was now looking at his work with reluctant admiration. "Family obligation. You've actually made progress," she noted. "The efficiency is already up 12%. Come back when you can." Ben made his way back to the education section, arriving just as children of various species began emerging from their learning pods. He spotted Luna immediately. Her silver hair stood out among the crowd, and she was animatedly explaining something to 2 other children who looked at her with expressions of awe. When she saw Ben, her face lit up. "Dad, you came." She raced over, grabbing his hand. "I have to show you something amazing. We learned about quantum entanglement today, and I think I figured out how to apply it to my tachyon detector design." The way Luna assumed he would understand her advanced scientific concepts stirred something in Ben. She spoke to him as if they'd been discussing physics together for years, not as if they'd just met yesterday. "Sounds fascinating," he said, genuinely interested. "Why don't you tell me about it over lunch?" They found a small food vendor in a plaza near the education section. Ben watched in amusement as Luna confidently ordered a meal that definitely wasn't on the standard menu, somehow convincing the vendor's automated system to create a customized combination of Terran and Aquilian cuisines. "You're quite persuasive," he observed as they sat at a small table. "Luna's chiragd. Systems want to work correctly. You just have to help them understand what correctly means in the specific context." Ben left. That's one way to put it. He hesitated, then asked carefully, "Luna, what do you remember about your mother? Your biological mother, I mean." Luna's expression grew thoughtful. "Mom Ellery? She had to go away to keep me safe. She absently swirled a utensil through her food. She has skin that changes colors when she's excited, and she can hold her breath underwater for really long times. She taught me how to speak to plants." Speak to plants. Luna nadidermistri. Aquilians can sense the electrical impulses plants use to communicate. It's not like talking with words, more like feeling their emotions. Mom Ellery said I have the gift too, but not as strong because I'm half human. "Do you miss her?" Ben asked softly. "Sometimes." Luna's star-filled eyes met his. "But Mom Sarah takes really good care of me, and she always said you'd come find us someday, when it was safe." She tilted her head curiously. "Did you come because it's safe now?" The innocent question hit Ben like a physical blow. How could he explain that he hadn't come for her at all? That yesterday, he hadn't even known she existed? "I came because..." He began, then paused, choosing his words carefully. "I came because it was time for me to find you, even if I didn't know it yet." It wasn't exactly a lie. Something had brought him to this station, to this moment, whether chance or fate or some fragment of memory working beneath the surface of his consciousness. Luna seemed satisfied with this answer. That's what Mom Sarah said, that sometimes people find each other when they're supposed to, even if they don't understand why. She took a bite of her food, then added casually, "She likes you, you know." Ben nearly choked on his drink. "What? Sera? She barely tolerates me." Luna giggled. That's how adults act when they like someone, but aren't sure about them yet. Her aura gets all sparkly when you talk, even when she's pretending to be annoyed. Oha. The energy field around people. Can't you see them? Luna looked genuinely surprised. I thought everyone could. Ben shook his head slowly. That's not a common human ability. Oh, Luna considered this. Maybe it's an Aquilian thing or a hybrid thing. Mom Ellery could see them too. She returned to her meal without further explanation, as if discussing supernatural perception was entirely ordinary. As they finished eating, Ben's device chimed with a reminder about the mandatory counseling session. "We should head to the bureau," he told Luna. "We have a meeting with Dr. Pym." Luna made a face. Dr. Pym is nice, but asks too many questions about feelings. I prefer talking about ideas. "You and me both, kid," Ben muttered as they cleared their table. The Bureau of Parental Affairs was less crowded in the afternoon than it had been the previous day. Sarah was already waiting in the reception area, her expression unreadable as Luna ran to greet her with an enthusiastic hug. "How was the morning?" Sarah asked, directing the question to Luna but glancing at Ben. "Great. Dad took me to education, and then we had lunch, and I told him about quantum entanglement and auras." Sarah raised an eyebrow at Ben. "Auras? You've been busy." "Apparently, it's an Aquilian trait," Ben said quietly. "One of many I'm learning about." Before Sarah could respond, a melodic tone sounded, and a small hovering platform appeared. "The counselor will see you now," announced the Bureau's automated system. "Please follow the guidance platform to Therapeutic Space 12. They were led through a series of corridors to a room that looked nothing like the sterile verification chamber from yesterday. This space was designed for comfort, with adaptable seating arranged in a circle, soft lighting, and a subtle aroma of what might have been lavender or some alien equivalent. Dr. Pym, she waited inside. They appeared mostly humanoid, but with distinctly feline features, slitted pupils and amber eyes, a fine coat of short fur covering their skin, and slightly pointed ears. They wore simple, flowing garments in muted blues and greens. "Welcome," they said, their voice a soothing purr. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Seating will adjust to your physiological preferences." As promised, when Ben sat on one of the cushioned surfaces, it immediately conformed to support his body perfectly. Luna chose a seat that transformed into something resembling a swing, which she gleefully rocked in. Sarah selected a more traditional chair, her posture remaining formal. "I am Dr. Pym, specializing in interspecies family dynamics and sudden parental identification cases." The counselor introduced themselves. "My role is to facilitate healthy integration during this mandatory observation period." They focused their amber gaze on Ben. "This must be quite disorienting for you, Technician Rowan." "That's an understatement," Ben replied dryly. Dr. Pym smiled, revealing slightly pointed teeth. "Indeed, being suddenly confronted with parenthood, you have no memory of would challenge anyone's equilibrium." They turned to Luna. "And you, young one, how are you feeling about meeting your biological father?" Luna swung gently in her seat. "Happy. I always knew he would come. Mom Ellery said he had kind eyes, and she was right." She looked at Ben with such trust that he felt a tightness in his chest. Dr. Pym nodded thoughtfully, then addressed Sarah. "And you, Guardian X-Vala? This changes the family dynamic you've established." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "My priority is Luna's well-being. Always has been." "Very commendable," Dr. Pym said, "though not quite what I asked about your feelings." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. "My feelings are irrelevant to the situation." "I would disagree," the counselor replied mildly. "In family systems, everyone's emotional state affects the whole." They tapped something into a small device. "But we have time to explore that. For today, I'd like to establish some baseline understanding and goals for this observation period. What followed was a surprisingly detailed discussion of everything from daily routines to emergency protocols, communication expectations to boundary setting. Dr. Pym gently but persistently guided them through scenarios they might encounter, encouraging all three to express their needs and concerns. Throughout the session, Ben found himself increasingly aware of Luna's extraordinary perceptiveness. She seemed to understand subtext and emotional undertones that should have been beyond a 5-year-old's comprehension, occasionally making observations that left even the counselor looking impressed. You have a remarkably integrated family system already, despite the circumstances, Dr. Pym noted as the session neared its end. Luna's security attachment to both Guardian Nextvala and Technician Rowan is unusually strong. They focused on Ben. Particularly interesting given the lack of prior interaction with you. It's the genetic memory imprint, Luna explained matter-of-factly. Aquilians never forget their parents' patterns. Dr. Pym's ears perked forward with interest. Fascinating. I'd like to discuss that more in our next session. They made a final note in their device. For now, I recommend continued shared activities, meals, recreation, education support, to establish routine and predictability. They stood, signaling the end of the session. The Bureau will receive my preliminary report today. Based on initial observations, I see no contraindications to the standard integration protocol. Their amber eyes fixed on Ben. Though I do recommend you process your feelings about this situation, Technician Rowan. Suppressed emotional responses often emerge in less constructive ways over time. I'll keep that in mind, Ben said, non-committally. As they left the Bureau, Luna between them once again, Sarah spoke quietly to Ben. I need to return to the lab to complete an experimental sequence. Can you stay with Luna for the afternoon? The monitoring drone will follow you regardless. Ben glanced up to see the silver sphere hovering discreetly above them, its blue light pulsing steadily. Sure, he agreed. I should check on my repair project anyway. Luna might find it interesting. Luna va un stick saitidli. Can I really see where you work? Can I help fix things? You can observe, Ben clarified quickly, imagining Talia's reaction if he brought a child to tinker with critical life support systems. But no improving anything without permission. Luna's expression suggested she considered this restriction unreasonable, but was willing to temporarily comply. As Sarah turned to leave, she paused. Ben, thank you for showing up today. For Luna. Before he could respond, she was gone, moving swiftly through the crowd toward the research sectors. Luna tugged at his hand. Come on, Dad. I want to see the environmental systems. Her enthusiasm was infectious, her absolute confidence in their connection still bewildering, but increasingly comfortable. As they made their way toward the eastern quadrant, Ben realized with a start that he'd gone nearly the entire day without questioning whether he should be involved in this child's life. For someone who had spent years avoiding lasting connections, the shift was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Talia had been skeptical about Luna's presence until the child spotted a cascade error in the diagnostic readout that all the adults had missed. After that, the supervisor had grudgingly allowed her to remain in the observation area while Ben worked. By the time they returned to Sarah's quarters that evening, Ben was exhausted but oddly content. Luna had proven to be not just brilliant, but genuinely good company, asking insightful questions, offering clever observations, and demonstrating a cheerful resilience that was remarkable for a child of any species. Sarah was already there, preparing the evening meal. She looked up as they entered, and Ben was surprised to find himself searching her expression for the sparkly aura Luna had mentioned. Ridiculous, of course. He didn't have Aquilian perceptual abilities. But something about the way Sarah's amber eyes softened when Luna excitedly recounted their afternoon made him wonder if the child's observations might have some merit. And then, Dad, let me calculate the optimal compression ratios for the new filtration algorithms. Luna was saying, practically bouncing as she helped set the table. The supervisor said it would have taken their systems 3 times longer to compute. Is that so? Sarah glanced at Ben with a hint of amusement. Converting my ward into a station engineer already. She converted herself, Ben replied. I just gave her access to the problems. The evening settled into a surprisingly comfortable routine. After dinner, Luna spent time working on her tachyon detector with Ben's guidance, while Sarah reviewed research data nearby. The domesticity of it all should have made Ben feel trapped, but instead, he found himself relaxing into the rhythm of family life in a way he hadn't experienced since leaving Earth years ago. When Luna's bedtime arrived, she insisted that both Sarah and Ben participate in the nightly ritual, teeth cleaning, requiring special attention to the extra row of Aquilian teeth, story selection, and tucking in. 2 stories tonight, Luna negotiated as they settled her into bed. One from Mom about plants, and one from Dad about space. Sarah went first, telling a gentle tale about a botanical research expedition that discovered sentient fungi who communicated through spore patterns. Luna listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that revealed she understood far more about xenobotany than most adults. It was Ben's turn. Feeling slightly put on the spot, he began a story about a repair technician who discovered a forgotten space station filled with ancient technology. To his surprise, the narrative flowed easily, drawing on his years of experience in various corners of the galaxy. Luna's eyes grew heavy as he described the technician's adventures, and by the time he reached the part about decoding alien maintenance protocols, she was fast asleep. As they quietly left her room, Sarah gave Ben an appraising look. "You're good with her," she said, sounding mildly surprised. Most humans find Aquilian-human hybrid development patterns disconcerting. "She's..." Ben struggled to find the right words. "Extraordinary. Different, yes, but in fascinating ways." Sarah nodded, moving to the kitchenette to prepare a hot beverage of some kind. "Would you like some Tilba tea? It helps with neural processing after high cognitive days." "Sure, thanks." They settled in the main living area, the comfortable silence broken only by the gentle bubbling of the plant's hydration system. "Talia from Environmental Control sent me a message," Sarah said finally. "She was impressed by both your repair work and your patience with Luna. Said you didn't even flinch when Luna started recalibrating the diagnostic equipment." Ben shrieked. She knew what she was doing. "I'm not going to dismiss competence just because it comes in a small package." "That's refreshingly enlightened." Sarah took a sip of her tea. "Many don't share that perspective." "Like Genesis Holdings?" Ben asked, deciding it was time to return to the subject they'd barely touched since yesterday. Sera-ce expression d'Arconed? Precisely like Genesis. To them, Luna is a specimen, not a person. A genetic anomaly to be studied, replicated, or exploited. She set down her cup with controlled precision. They've been hunting Elri for 3 years, ever since they discovered her research into adaptive genetic expressions. What exactly do they want with Luna? Her hybrid genetics demonstrate something that shouldn't be possible. The seamless integration of human and Aquilian DNA without the compatibility issues that plague most interspecies reproduction. The standard theory is that the lunar festival spores acted as a catalyst, temporarily altering genetic barriers. Sarah's voice took on a clinical tone, as if distance could make the subject less personal. And Genesis wants to replicate this for profit, Ben surmised. For bioweapons, actually, Sarah corrected grimly. Elri discovered their true interest was in creating genetically enhanced soldiers or operatives who could adapt to any environment. Water, space, toxic atmospheres. Luna's existence proves it's possible. Ben felt cold anger spreading through him. They want to use her as a template for super soldiers? Or worse, they might want to harvest genetic material directly from her for their experiments. Sarah's hands tightened around her cup. Elri discovered their plans when she was still working as a consultant for one of their subsidiary labs. She took Luna and ran, eventually bringing her to me when the constant movement became too destabilizing for a young child. And now my appearance at the station with the mandatory verification process might have alerted them. Ben said, the implications hitting him fully. Sera noted. The Bureau's systems are technically secure, but Genesis has resources and influence. They likely have alerts set for any genetic verification involving Aquilian human profiles. How much danger are we in right now? That's hard to assess. The station has security protocols, and Genesis can't simply abduct a child for a regulated corporate hub without consequences. Sarah met his eyes directly, but they're patient and clever. They might be gathering information, planning, waiting for an opportunity. Ben rubbed his face, struggling to process everything. So what's the plan? Keep Luna here indefinitely, hoping they don't find a way in? That's not a life for a child. No, it's not, Sarah agreed quietly. Ellery has been working on a more permanent solution. She believes she's found a way to alter Luna's genetic signature enough to make her untraceable to Genesis while preserving her essential abilities in nature. Alta genetics. Is that even possible? With Aquilian biotechnology, yes. Their understanding of genetic manipulation is centuries ahead of human science. Sera hésitated, but it would require specific catalysts that Ellery is still gathering. And there would be side effects. What kind of side effects? Ben asked, suddenly wary. Sarah met his gaze steadily. The process would sever certain genetic connections, including the parental imprint Luna has with you. The implications hit Ben with surprising force. She wouldn't recognize me anymore, wouldn't feel that connection. The biological, instinctual connection would be altered, yes. Sarah's voice softened slightly. But memories, emotional bonds, those would remain. Luna would still know who you are. She just wouldn't have that innate Aquilian certainty, the ability to recognize you at the genetic level. Ben stood and paced the small living area, emotions churning. Why did this bother him so much? Yesterday, he hadn't even known Luna existed. Now the thought of losing the special connection she felt with him, even one he barely understood, felt like a profound loss. This is Ellery's plan? To change Luna so fundamentally that she loses part of her heritage. It's to keep her alive and free, Sarah said sharply. Genesis won't stop hunting her as long as her current genetic makeup exists in their databases. This isn't about heritage, it's about survival. Before Ben could respond, a soft chime sounded from Sarah's personal device. She checked it, her expression instantly shifting to alert concern. What is it? Ben asked. A message, using one of Ellery's emergency protocols. Sarah's fingers flew over the device. It's encrypted, but the fact that she's using this channel means something's wrong. After a tense moment of decryption, Sarah's face paled. Genesis operatives have been spotted on the station. They arrived on the supply transport 6 hours ago. She looked up at Ben, fear evident in her eyes. They're already here. The monitoring drone chose that moment to drift into view, its blue light pulsing steadily as it observed their interaction. Ben moved closer to Sarah, lowering his voice. Can we trust that thing isn't feeding information back to them? On dit sera murmure. Bureau systems are separate from corporate networks, but infiltration is always possible. She stood abruptly. I need to check on Luna. They moved quickly to Luna's bedroom, where the child remained peacefully asleep, silver hair splayed across her pillow, one arm hugging a plush representation of a quantum particle. Should we wake her? Move somewhere else. Ben asked softly. Sarah shook her head. Not yet. Sudden movement might trigger tracking algorithms. We need to be strategic. She gently closed Luna's door and led Ben back to the main room, where she activated a small device from one of her many pockets. Sound dampening field, she explained as a faint shimmer surrounded them. The drone can see but not hear us now. What's our next move? Ben asked, surprised by how naturally he'd slipped into thinking of them as a unit. Ellery included coordinates in her message, a meeting point in the lower maintenance levels of the station. She must be here or on her way. Sarah's eyes showed a mix of hope and fear. If she's risking coming to the station herself, the situation must be critical. When do we go? After station midnight, when surveillance is at minimum capacity. Sarah studied him. This isn't your fight, Ben. You could walk away now, claim no knowledge of Genesis, makes inquiries. The suggestion stung more than he expected. She's my daughter, he said firmly. Whatever I remembered or didn't remember before doesn't change that fact. I'm not leaving her to face this alone. Something shifted in Sarah's expression, a softening, perhaps even respect. You surprise me, Technician Rowan. I'm surprising myself, he admitted. But I've spent too many years drifting from job to job, station to station, never putting down roots. Maybe it's time I stopped running. Sera nodded slowly. Get some rest if you can. We move at 0200 hours. As Ben returned to the guest alcove, his mind raced with everything he'd learned. Somewhere in this station, corporate operatives were searching for Luna, his daughter, to exploit her unique genetics. And somewhere else, her biological mother was waiting, perhaps with a solution that would protect Luna but sever the innate connection between them. He lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing sleep would be impossible. The past 2 days had completely upended his solitary existence. He'd gone from free-roaming technician to father, from avoiding attachments to finding himself at the center of a family in crisis. And strangest of all, he didn't want to escape. For the first time in years, running away felt like the wrong choice. At precisely 0130 hours, Sarah silently appeared at his door. She wore dark, practical clothing with multiple pockets and a utility belt containing tools and devices Ben didn't recognize. Her copper-gold hair was tightly braided, and her expression was grim determination. "It's time," she whispered. "I've programmed the monitoring drone to loop footage of us sleeping. It won't fool advanced systems for long, but it should give us a head start." Ben was already dressed and ready, having spent the hours modifying some of his repair tools for potential defensive use. "What about Luna? She's awake. I've explained as much as needed. She understands we're meeting Ellery and that we need to be very quiet and careful." They moved to the main living area, where Luna waited, dressed in dark clothing similar to Sarah's. The child's star-filled eyes were wide but unafraid, and she carried a small backpack that hummed faintly with whatever technology she'd packed inside. "Dad," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "Mom says we're going on a secret mission to find Mom Ellery." Ben knelt to her level. "That's right. And we need to be very careful and follow Mom Sarah's instructions exactly. Can you do that?" Luna nodded solemnly. I deactivated my room monitors and recalibrated my personal device to mask our biosignatures. She held up her wrist device proudly. "It should confuse standard tracking algorithms for at least 4 hours." Ben exchanged an impressed look with Sarah. "That's extremely helpful." Sarah checked her own device. "Let's move. We'll take the maintenance corridors to avoid the main surveillance network." With Luna between them, they slipped out of the dwelling and into the dimly lit corridors of the residential deck. The station's night cycle meant reduced lighting and minimal activity, though automated systems continued their endless work maintaining the artificial environment. Sarah led them to what appeared to be a solid wall panel, then pressed a specific sequence on her device. The panel slid silently open, revealing a narrow passage lit only by emergency strips along the floor. "Maintenance access," she explained quietly. "My botanical research gives me clearance for irrigation system checks." They moved swiftly through the hidden network of corridors, occasionally pausing as Sarah checked her device or listened intently. Luna remained remarkably quiet and focused, occasionally whispering observations about the station systems they passed. After nearly 30 minutes of careful navigation, they reached a larger junction area where multiple maintenance tunnels converged. Pipes and conduits ran in every direction, carrying the lifeblood of the station: water, air, power, data. "This is the meeting point," Sarah said, checking the coordinates again. "Ellery should be here," said a soft voice from the shadows. A figure emerged from one of the adjacent tunnels. At first glance, she appeared to be made of living water, her skin a translucent blue that rippled with subtle patterns, her eyes deep and dark like the ocean floor. Her hair floated around her head in silver-blue tendrils that seemed to move with an invisible current. "Mom Ellery," Luna whispered excitedly, though she remained at Sarah's side as instructed. The Aquilian woman moved forward, her movements fluid and graceful even in the artificial gravity of the station. She knelt before Luna, placing a six-fingered hand gently on the child's cheek. "My beautiful Starlight," she murmured. "You've grown so much." Then her gaze shifted to Ben, and he felt a jolt of recognition so powerful it nearly staggered him. Those eyes, he'd seen them before, in dreams he couldn't quite remember upon waking. "Benjamin Rowan," she said, her voice like water flowing over stones. "The festival brought us together once. Now fate does so again." "Elry," he managed, fragments of memories struggling to surface, bioluminescent spores drifting like snow, music that vibrated through his bones, eyes as deep as the ocean pulling him under. "I don't remember much. The spores affect humans differently than Aquilians," she acknowledged. "Your memories were suppressed, but never truly lost." She stood, facing both Ben and Sarah. "But we have no time for reminiscence." Genesis operatives are moving through the station systematically. They've already accessed the Bureau records and confirmed Luna's genetic profile. "How do they get clearance for Bureau files?" Sarah asked, alarmed. Elry's expression darkened. "Corporate espionage, bribery, or simple intimidation. Does it matter? What matters is they know Ben is here, they know Luna is here, and they're closing in." She turned to Luna, her voice gentling. "Little Starlight, do you have the device I sent you specifications for last transmission?" Luna nodded eagerly and dug into her small backpack, producing what appeared to be a handheld apparatus with multiple crystalline components arranged in a complex pattern. "I built it exactly like the diagrams. It can generate the frequency modulations you described, but I added an amplification circuit to extend the range by 23%. Elry's eyes widened in surprise and obvious pride. "Remarkable." She examined the device carefully. "This is perfect, better than perfect." Ben leaned closer. "What is it?" "A genetic resonance disruptor," Elry explained. "It temporarily masks biological signatures from standard scanning technology. Essential for our next move." She turned back to Sarah. "The preparation facility is ready? You secured access?" Sarah nodded. "Level 12, Section H. Ostensibly a botanical research annex, but I've modified the equipment according to your specifications." "Good." Elry knelt before Luna again. "Starlight, listen carefully. We're going to a special laboratory where we'll perform a procedure that will help keep you safe from the bad people who are looking for you." Luna tilted her head, star-filled, eyes serious. "The genetic rewriting protocol you've been developing? To alter my biometric markers while preserving cognitive function." The adults exchanged surprised glances at Luna's precise, technical understanding. "Yes," Elry confirmed. "But you should know, it will change some things about you. The connection you feel with your father, the genetic imprint that helped you recognize him, it may be affected." Luna looked up at Ben, her expression thoughtful. "I'll still remember him, though, all our time together." "Yes," Elry assured her. "Memory and emotion remain intact. It's only the biological recognition patterns that will shift." Luna seemed to consider this deeply, then reached for Ben's hand. "That's acceptable. I already know my dad now. I don't need special Aquilian senses to recognize him anymore." The simple confidence in her statement sent a surge of emotion through Ben that he couldn't fully name. His child, had such complete trust in their connection after just 2 days together. "We need to move," Sarah urged, checking her device. "Security systems show unusual access patterns in the residential database. They may have already discovered our absence." Elry nodded and activated Luna's genetic disruptor. A soft humming filled the air, and Ben felt a strange tingling across his skin. "Follow me," Elry instructed, leading them deeper into the maintenance network. They moved swiftly through the hidden infrastructure of the station, occasionally passing automated maintenance drones that seemed oblivious to their presence thanks to Luna's device. Ben noticed that Elry moved with extraordinary grace even in the dry station environment, her fluid motions suggesting she was more at home in water. After navigating a complex series of junctions and access ways, they reached a service elevator that Sarah activated with her research credentials. "This goes directly to the restricted research levels," she explained as they entered the small compartment. Limited surveillance, specialized security. As the elevator descended, Ben found himself studying Elri. The Aquilian woman's translucent skin revealed the faint outlines of an alien circulatory system beneath, pulsing with luminescent fluid rather than blood. Yet there was something hauntingly familiar about her features, the way she moved, the timbre of her voice. "You're remembering," she observed quietly, catching his gaze. The spore's effects diminish with proximity to triggered memories. "Fragments," Ben admitted. "Lights. Music. Your eyes." He hesitated. "Why didn't you find me? After Luna was born?" Elri's expression softened. "I tried, but you'd already left the system by then. And when I discovered what Genesis wanted." She glanced at Luna, who was engrossed in monitoring her device's readings. "I had to prioritize her safety. Finding you became secondary." The elevator slowed and stopped. A soft chime indicated they had reached their destination. Sarah moved first, checking that the corridor was clear before signaling the others to follow. Level 12 had the sterile, controlled atmosphere of a research facility. The lighting was brighter, the air drier, and heavily filtered. Sarah led them swiftly past several laboratories until they reached a door marked Botanical Genomics. Authorized personnel only. She placed her hand on the scanner, and the door slid open to reveal what appeared to be a standard botanical research lab. Growth chambers, analysis equipment, sample storage units. But Ben noticed that some of the equipment had been modified, repurposed for functions clearly unrelated to plant study. "The preparation area is through there." Sarah indicated a connecting room. "I've configured according to your specifications, but some of the components are jury-rigged from available materials." Elri moved to inspect the equipment, her fingers dancing over interfaces with practiced precision. "This will suffice. You've done remarkable work with limited resources." Ben approached a central platform that resembled a medical diagnostic bed more than any botanical equipment he recognized. "Is this where—" "Yes," Elri confirmed. "Luna will need to remain in the chamber for approximately 40 minutes while the genetic repatterning occurs." She turned to the child. "It won't hurt, Starlight, but you might feel strange sensations as your cellular structure adjusts." Luna nodded solemnly, then looked up at Ben. "Will you stay close? In case I get scared." "Right here the whole time," Ben promised without hesitation. As Elri and Sarah prepared the equipment, running final calibrations and activating various systems, Ben knelt beside Luna. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. Luna considered the question with typical thoughtfulness. "A little, but it's necessary and fascinating from a scientific perspective. I'll be the first human Aquilian hybrid to undergo targeted genetic reconfiguration." She smiled suddenly, her star-filled eyes brightening. "I can write a paper about it for my next education project." Ben couldn't help but laugh. Of course, this extraordinary child would see her own genetic alteration as a research opportunity. "I'm glad you found me," Luna added quietly. "Even if you didn't mean to." Ben felt that twist in his chest again, that strange protective ache he was beginning to recognize as parental feeling. "Me too, kiddo." He hesitated, then added, "Even if the procedure changes how you sense me, nothing changes how I feel about you. I'll still be your dad." "I know," Luna said with absolute certainty. "That's how family works. It's not just genetics." From across the room, Elri called, "We're ready." Luna squeezed Ben's hand once, then walked bravely to the platform, where Sarah helped her lie down comfortably. Elri attached several small sensor pads to Luna's temples and wrists. "These will monitor your vital signs and neural patterns," she explained. "The chamber will do most of the work, but I need you to remain as still as possible." "Can you do that?" "I've been practicing meditation techniques from the Centaurian monks," Luna assured her. "I can regulate my autonomic responses for up to 12 minutes at a time." Elri smiled, touching her daughter's cheek gently. "Of course you can." She activated a sequence on the main console, and a transparent dome descended over the platform, enclosing Luna in a sealed environment. "Initiating biological restructuring sequence," Elri announced, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. "Phase 1, cellular isolation." A fine mist began to fill Luna's chamber, shimmering with bioluminescent particles that reminded Ben of the memory fragments from the lunar festival. Luna remained perfectly still, her eyes closed in concentration. Phase 2, genetic targeting, Elri continued, isolating identifiable markers in sequence 42 alpha through 87 delta. The mist inside the chamber began to change color, shifting from silvery blue to a deeper indigo. Ben watched anxiously as readings flickered across multiple displays, most showing data he couldn't interpret. "Is everything normal?" he asked Sarah, who was monitoring a separate console. She nodded without looking up. Vital signs stable. Neural patterns within expected parameters. For several minutes, they worked in tense silence, Elri making minute adjustments to the process while Sarah monitored Luna's condition. Ben stood close to the chamber, maintaining visual contact with Luna, who occasionally opened her eyes to offer him a reassuring smile. Beginning Phase 3, Elri announced. Reconfiguration of target sequences. The moment the words left her mouth, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed, and the laboratory door slid shut with a heavy locking sound. Station security alert, an automated voice announced. Unauthorized procedure detected in botanical research. Containment protocols initiated. Sarah's fingers flew across her console. Someone's triggered the biohazard alerts. The system thinks we're conducting unauthorized genetic experimentation. We are, Ben pointed out. Yes, but no one should have known that, Sarah countered. The security feeds to this section were looped. Genesis, Elri interrupted grimly. They found us. She continued working, her movements now more urgent. We can't stop now. Luna is in the critical phase of reconfiguration. Interruption could cause cellular instability. The facility's communication system activated. Attention in Botanical Research Lab 12H. This is station security. We have detected unauthorized genetic manipulation procedures. Cease all activities immediately and prepare for inspection. Ben moved to the main door, examining the security lockdown. How long until they override the locks? 10 minutes, maybe less, Sarah estimated, still working frantically at her console. I'm trying to counteract the alert, but they've locked me out of the main security protocols. We need more time, Elri insisted, never looking up from her work. The reconfiguration needs at least 15 more minutes to stabilize. Inside the chamber, Luna remained calm, though her eyes were now open, watching the adults with intense focus. Ben made a quick decision. Sarah, keep monitoring Luna. Elri, focus on completing the procedure as quickly as safely possible. He moved to his tool bag and began rapidly assembling components. I'll buy us time. Using his repair technician's expertise, Ben quickly modified several tools into a rudimentary but effective override device for the laboratory's internal security systems. This won't stop them completely, he explained as he worked, but it will create cascading diagnostic errors in the door mechanisms throughout this section. Should confuse their systems long enough for us to finish. He attached his device to the door's control panel, activating a sequence that sent conflicting commands through the security network. Immediately, the warning lights in the corridor outside began to flicker erratically. Station security systems experiencing multiple sector failures, the automated voice announced. Emergency protocols activating. All personnel remain in current locations. It's working, Sarah confirmed, checking her device. Security teams are being diverted to multiple false alerts across 3 decks. Ben returned to the chamber where Luna lay, still surrounded by the glowing mist. She gave him a thumbs up through the transparent dome, her expression showing complete confidence in the adults protecting her. Phase 3 at 80% completion, Elri reported. Genetic markers being successfully reconfigured. For several tense minutes, they worked in urgent silence. Elri guiding the delicate procedure, Sarah monitoring Luna's condition, and Ben maintaining his sabotage of the security systems. The fragile bubble of safety held, but all of them knew it was temporary. Warning, the station's automated system suddenly announced. Manual override of security protocols detected in Section H. Security response teams rerouting. They've figured it out, Ben warned. How much longer? 3 minutes, Ellery replied, her fingers never stopping their intricate dance across the controls. We're nearly there. The sounds of boots in the corridor outside became audible. Heavy, purposeful steps approaching their location. Occupants of Laboratory 12H, a stern voice called through the communication system. This is Genesis Security Operating Understation Authority. Open this door immediately or we will use force. Ben looked to Ellery, who shook her head sharply. 90 seconds more. Don't let them interrupt now. We're at the most critical phase. The pounding on the laboratory door began, followed by the sound of cutting tools activating. They were trying to breach the entrance manually. 60 seconds, Ellery announced, her voice tight with tension. Ben grabbed his modified repair tools, positioning himself between the door and the chamber containing Luna. Sarah moved to stand beside him, holding what appeared to be a botanical sample collector that she'd quickly modified into an improvised defensive tool. 30 seconds, Ellery called. The mist in Luna's chamber was changing again, condensing and being absorbed into her skin, which briefly took on a luminescent quality, before returning to its normal pale blue. The laboratory door began to glow red-hot along one edge as cutting tools sliced through from the outside. 10 seconds, Ellery said, her voice steadier now. 9, 8. The first section of the door panel fell inward with a heavy clang. 5, 4. A mechanical arm extended through the opening, beginning to pry the damaged door aside. 3, 2, 1. Reconfiguration complete, Ellery announced triumphantly. The chamber dome retracted, and she quickly removed the sensor pads from Luna. It worked. Her genetic signature has been successfully altered. Luna sat up, looking slightly disoriented, but otherwise unharmed. I feel tingly, she observed, examining her hands with scientific curiosity. And my perception is different. Colors have shifted spectrums. Before anyone could respond, the laboratory door crashed open completely. 4 figures entered, human in general appearance, but with the unmistakable enhanced physiology and uniform precision of corporate security operatives. Each wore the subtle Genesis Holdings insignia on their tactical gear. Remain where you are, ordered the leader, a tall woman with cybernetic enhancements visible along her temples. The child comes with us by order of Genesis Holdings, under the Interstellar Biological Research Treaty, Section 17. That treaty only applies to non-sentient specimens, Sarah countered, not lowering her improvised weapon. It has no jurisdiction over sentient beings. The security leader smiled coldly. The legal status of human Aquilian hybrids remains undefined in current statutes. Our lawyers are quite confident in our position. Ben stepped forward, placing himself directly between the operatives and Luna. Your lawyers can debate all they want. You're not taking my daughter. Ah, the father we've heard so much about. The leader's augmented eyes scanned him. The missing genetic contributor. How fortunate that you've appeared just in time to witness the importance of your contribution to science. He's not contributing anything else, Ellery stated firmly, now standing protectively beside Luna. And neither is our daughter. The genetic profile you're seeking no longer exists. The leader's expression faltered slightly. Explain. We've completed a full genetic reconfiguration, Ellery said. Luna's unique markers, the ones your company is so interested in, have been permanently altered. Scan her. See for yourself. The security leader signaled to one of her team, who raised an advanced scanning device and directed it toward Luna. After a moment, confusion crossed the operative's face. Ma'am, the readings? They don't match our target profile. The hybrid signatures are significantly altered. Key markers in sequences 42 through 87 are completely different. The leader's augmented eyes narrowed. Impossible. No one has that technology. Aquilians do, Ellery replied simply. It's our heritage, our science, developed over millennia of evolution in changing oceans. We understand genetic fluidity in ways your corporation never will. Uncertainty flickered across the leader's face, but she quickly masked it with renewed authority. It doesn't matter. We'll take the child for verification and research. Our scientists can determine what's been done and how to reverse it. You misunderstand, Elry said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge that reminded Ben that Aquilians evolved from predator species. The changes aren't simply masked or suppressed. They're permanently rewritten at the quantum level. The genetic patterns your company wants no longer exist anywhere in the universe. They cannot be recovered, reproduced, or reverse engineered. The tension in the room was palpable as the Genesis operatives processed this information. Ben could almost see the calculations happening behind the leader's enhanced eyes. The cost-benefit analysis of taking a child who no longer possessed the genetic markers they sought, the potential legal complications, the dimming scientific value. You've defied a direct order from a corporation with full legal authority in this sector, the leader said finally. There will be consequences. Oh, I'm counting on it, Sarah replied, suddenly smiling. She tapped a sequence on her device, and the laboratory's communication system activated. Attention all station personnel and visitors, announced a new voice, commanding, authoritative. This is Station Administrator Workin. A serious breach of station regulations has occurred in the research sector. Genesis Holdings operatives have attempted to unlawfully seize a child under station protection, violating statutes 37, 42, and 103 of the Interstellar Child Safety Protocols. The security leader's expression turned to shock. How did you? I've worked on the station for 5 years, Sarah interrupted. Did you think I wouldn't have contingency plans? Emergency protocols? Friends in high places? Furthermore, the administrator's voice continued. All Genesis Holdings permits and authorizations are hereby suspended pending full investigation. Corporate security operatives are ordered to report to station security for immediate processing and potential detention. The leader's augmented eyes darted between the exits, her team, and Luna, clearly recalculating her diminishing options. This isn't over, she stated flatly. Genesis protects its interests. So do parents, Ben replied, not backing down. Remember that. After a final tense moment, the leader signaled her team to stand down. They retreated slowly through the damaged doorway, where station security officers were now arriving, weapons ready. As the Genesis operatives were escorted away, Luna emerged from behind her parents, her star-filled eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. Are they gone? She asked, gripping both Ben's and Elry's hands. For now, Elry answered honestly, but we're safer than before. Ben knelt to Luna's level. How do you feel? Are you okay? Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. I feel different, but still me. She studied Ben's face intently. I can't sense your genetic pattern anymore. That special feeling that told me you were my dad. A small furrow appeared between her brows. But I remember you. I know you. You're still my dad. The simple declaration hit Ben with unexpected force. This child still claimed him, not through biological imperative or genetic programming, but through choice and memory. It felt more meaningful somehow. That's right, he confirmed, his voice rougher than he intended. And nothing changes that. Elry placed a gentle hand on Luna's head. The procedure worked perfectly. Your genetic signature is now unique, different enough that Genesis's targeting algorithms won't recognize you, but stable enough to maintain your abilities and health. Does this mean we're safe now? Luna asked. The adults exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the complicated truth. Safer, Sarah said carefully. Genesis will need time to reassess, and the station administration is now officially involved. That gives us protection and legal standing we didn't have before. Station security officers entered the laboratory, led by a senior officer whose insignia indicated high rank. Guardian Nexvala, they greeted Sarah formally. The administrator requests your presence, all of you, in the central offices immediately. There are significant discussions to be had about tonight's events. Ben, Sarah, and Elry exchanged concerned glances. Station administration involvement was a double-edged sword. Protection from Genesis, but potential complications regarding their unauthorized genetic procedure. Will come, Sarah agreed, gathering their essential equipment. But the child's welfare remains our priority. Understood, the officer nodded. The administrator has specifically invoked child protection protocols. Your daughter's safety is assured. As they prepare to leave the damaged laboratory, Luna slipped her small hand into Ben's. Are you going to stay with us now? She asked, those star-filled eyes looking up at him with hope and uncertainty. Ben looked from Luna to Sarah, then to Elry. 3 days ago, he'd been a solitary technician with no attachments, drifting from job to job across the galaxy. Now he was part of something far more complex. A family formed not by conventional means, but no less real for its unusual origins. Yes, he said, the decision crystallizing with surprising clarity. I am staying. The next 12 hours passed in a whirlwind of official statements, legal proceedings, and medical examinations. The station administrator, a shrewd, multi-limbed being with a reputation for absolute adherence to regulations, proved unexpectedly sympathetic to their situation once all facts were presented. Genesis Holdings has overstepped its authority, they declared after reviewing all evidence. The attempted seizure of a child under station protection violates our most fundamental principles. The Genesis operatives were detained, and their corporate representatives on the station found their access severely restricted. It wouldn't stop a corporation of their size and influence forever, but it created a crucial buffer of safety. Luna was examined by station medical personnel, who confirmed Elry's procedure had been successful and caused no harm. The child's genetic structure had been permanently altered, similar enough to her original pattern to maintain her health and unique abilities, but different enough that she no longer matched Genesis's target profile. By the time they returned to Sarah's quarters, exhaustion had overtaken all of them. Luna fell asleep almost immediately, curled between Elry and Sarah on the dwelling's main seating area, unwilling to be separated from either of them. Ben sat nearby, watching the three of them with a strange mixture of emotions, protectiveness, wonder, and a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. What happens now? He asked quietly, once Luna was deeply asleep. Elry looked up, her oceanic eyes meeting his. Genesis will regroup, reassess. They won't give up entirely, but Luna is no longer their primary target. The unique genetic configuration they sought is gone. But they might still come after her out of spite, Sarah pointed out. Corporate vendettas can be long-lasting. We have options now that we didn't before, Elry said. The station administration has granted us protected status. And with Ben officially recognized as Luna's father, we have stronger legal standing in multiple jurisdictions. Ben leaned forward. I've been thinking about that. My current contract was only for 6 weeks, but there are permanent positions available in the station's engineering division. I could apply, stay here. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You'd give up your independent contractor status? Your freedom to move around the galaxy? Freedom to run away, you mean? Ben corrected with unexpected honesty. That's what I've been doing for years, moving from job to job, never staying long enough to form attachments. He glanced at Luna's sleeping form. Maybe it's time I stopped running. It won't be simple, Elry warned. Luna's safety might require us to relocate eventually, despite the station's current protection. And her unique nature will always attract attention. Scientific, corporate, perhaps even governmental. Nothing worthwhile is simple, Ben replied. And she deserves to have all of us protecting her, not just you two. A moment of understanding passed between the three adults. An acknowledgement that whatever unconventional family unit they were forming, it was rooted in the shared priority of Luna's well-being. The 30-day observation period mandated by the Bureau of Parental Affairs passed swiftly, with Genesis temporarily neutralized and the station administration providing official protection. They settled into a new routine. Ben's application for a permanent engineering position was fast-tracked and approved, giving him official status as a station resident. Elry remained as well, moving into a separate dwelling nearby, but spending most of her time with them. Her presence required some explanation to the Bureau officials, but the unique circumstances of their case, now officially documented in station records, provided sufficient justification for the unconventional arrangement. Luna thrived with all three parents in her life. Though she no longer possessed the innate Aquilian ability to recognize Ben at the genetic level, their connection grew stronger through shared experiences. Working on technical projects together, his patient guidance as she built increasingly sophisticated inventions, and the nightly ritual of storytelling that became sacred to both of them. 3 months after the confrontation with Genesis, Ben was recalibrating environmental systems when his personal device chimed with a message from Sarah. Luna's education pod wants to speak with all parents immediately. His heart raced momentarily before he realized the message lacked urgency markers. Not an emergency, then, but important enough to summon all three of them. When he arrived at the education section, he found Sarah and Elry already waiting outside Luna's pod. The education coordinator, a tall, spectral being with multiple visual organs, greeted them with what seemed to be excitement rather than concern. "Thank you for coming so quickly," they said, their voice a melodic whisper. "We've experienced an unprecedented development that requires parental consultation. Is Luna all right?" Elry asked immediately. "Oh, quite well," the coordinator assured them. "Extraordinarily so, in fact. Please see for yourselves." They were led into the education pod, where Luna sat surrounded by holographic displays showing complex molecular structures rotating in 3 dimensions. She was manipulating them with quick, confident gestures, occasionally making annotations that floated in the air around her. Luna has developed a theoretical framework for interspecies genetic stability that exceeds our advanced curriculum parameters, the coordinator explained, voice filled with academic excitement. Her work builds upon both Aquilian biotechnology and human adaptive engineering in ways our systems cannot fully assess. Luna looked up, noticing them for the first time. Mom Suha, Dad, I figured it out." She gestured enthusiastically at the hovering molecular structures, a universal translation protocol for genetic communication between different species. "It could help others like me someday." Ben moved closer, examining the complex models with growing amazement. Despite his technical background, the sophistication of Luna's work was beyond high.